Hello everyone and welcome back to A Couple Books. This is Couple, as per usual. It's been a while since I've done a LitRPG book review, so that is what we're going to be doing today. This is going to be a massive LitRPG book that I'm going to be reviewing today. It was 1,200 pages, and it is a isekai LitRPG that has base building in it. Basically, it is about a man who is going to be in charge of massive armies. So if you're into video games where you are in charge of moving entire armies around and it's all about strategic placement and conquest, and you're also into base building, then this might just be the LitRPG for you. With that, let's get started with this review, and I'll tell you a little bit about the storyline. Why don't we? So the title of this book is Summoned to a RPG World. This is written by Oisin Muldowney. I do believe is how you pronounce it, but it's probably not. I can't pronounce names, and I apologize. And that should be no reflection on anyone. It's just the fact is I can't even spell names or write them or say them, apparently. And this is coming from the man with the odd name himself. So what is this story about? As I told you guys, this is going to be a book that's in the center around the gaming mechanics of moving armies and conquest and being in charge of massive large groups of people, and as well it's going to have base building in it, so improving infrastructure, building new buildings, researching, all those types of things you guys can see in a variety of different games out there. That is just the mechanics of the story. What is the actual story itself? Well, let me tell you. So this story is all about our main character, whose name is Sean. Sean is a 20-some who basically, for lack of a better word, is depressed, and he is not really seeing much in life. He's recently become an adult orphan as he's lost both of his parents, and he's just really not in a good place. This is all going to change when he gets a notification while playing one of his video games that's asking him if he wants to be summoned. And he clicks yes, and he gets summoned into this massive new world with fantasy elements, magic, armies, kingdoms, gods, goddesses. This world is basically all taking place on this one massive continent where there are 25 different kingdoms who are all warring against each other to become the supreme kingdom. Now, why are these kingdoms doing it? Well, these kingdoms each represent a god or goddess, and the 25 god or goddesses all pit their strengths against each other by setting their worshippers after one another, and the kingdom that basically becomes the supreme kingdom on the continent, basically that kingdom's goddess or god will become the god supreme for a few millennia or a few hundred years or a few generations or whatever have you, and then it all begins again. So it's this massive cycle where the gods basically pit their forces against each other to see who will win. And since the gods cannot act directly, they have to basically act indirectly through their kingdoms. And so Sean is summoned to this world after the king of this kingdom basically was not doing a very good job in allowing his kingdom to fall into disrepair, and its armies were declining massively. The people were not in a good place, and Sean has been summoned with the help of the kingdom's goddess in order to basically take over, and hopefully he can fix all the damage that has been done by this king who only wanted to eat food and live in luxury rather than actually participate in the game and pull his stuff together in order to possibly win this conquest against his 24 other opponents. Sean is going to be more than up to the task, as him and the sorceress who summoned him and the other leaders in this kingdom are all going to come together, and they're going to try and figure out what they need to do in order to basically fix the damage that the previous king had done before he was exiled from his body and Sean was brought into it. And that is basically the very early premise of it. Now, this is a 1,200 page story, so we're going to see it start from Sean coming into the king's body, and we're going to see him go through betrayals. We're going to see him forge alliances with a lot of different people out there, a lot of people you wouldn't expect, and we're going to see him engage in massive conquests and battles, and we're going to see where it all leads. There's also going to be a lot of base building in this story where Sean has to not only worry about what's happening on the battleground, but also what's happening back home, as he needs to ensure that his throne and his kingdom is defended well, and that he's able to provide the necessary food and weapons and materials to his citizens, and also in order to outfit his army so that they can be the best on the battlefield. So there's a lot of moving parts in the story, and there's a lot of different gaming components involved in it, and it isn't just about leveling up and gaining new attribute points and more experience, but it's also about being strategic and planning out how you're not only going to worry about yourself, but you're going to worry about all the people who are underneath you and how you're going to ensure that your army is the best army out there. It's a really fun story. I really enjoyed it, and if you're someone who's really into the ideas of like grand conquest, or someone who's really into base building, then this might be the lit RPG for you, because I think that it had all those components. It really did a good job with them and really kept it engaging and interesting, and overall was very fun. Now, what are some of the critiques I had of it? Not necessarily bad ones, but this book is 1,200 pages, which is a very long lit RPG, and my first worry while reading this was, oh my god, this book's going to drag on and it's not going to ever end. I actually had the exact opposite problem. I felt that the author could have done so much, and he was limited by the fact that he was already at 1,200 pages. And for once, I think, actually, I do believe that this book could have been helped by being turned into a trilogy or a duology. Usually, I feel like authors stretch out their works way too long, and they stretch out a story past the point that it really needs. But that is not the case here. I felt that the author really had a lot of really good parts in the story, and I felt the author had character arcs working that really could have deserved even a full novel of its own. And I think that this story could have even benefited from becoming a trilogy or duology, and us having more time with the characters and their arcs and a lot of the other moving components in it. It is 1,200 books, and it is only one book, so it's going to be a lot of things happening very quickly. And I can't hate that, because I love that, like, whoa, like, you don't even have time to think because we're already on to the next thing. And I really enjoy that, and it really makes you feel fast-paced, and it really makes you feel the pressure that Sean is feeling in order to get all this stuff done. While I would have enjoyed this being a duology or a trilogy, I perfectly understand why the author didn't. I don't think he hurt himself at all by making it one book, only that it could have very easily been turned into a duology or a trilogy and been expanded upon and given us more time with many of the characters. Now, what is some other stuff that I really enjoyed about this book? I really enjoyed that the author is not shy about doing some really interesting and fun choices with his characters. Usually when you read books, there's this kind of idea that like the good guy always has to come out on top. Our author is not afraid to not pull his punches, and he really lays it out thick, and Sean really just does not have it going for him many times over, and it wasn't so overdone that you were like, wow, this is just a story about Sean getting beaten up over and over again, both mentally and physically, but it's a story where you really see a character who comes against an obstacle and has to push past this obstacle, and the obstacles are actually something that's in his way. It's not just something to move the story along, it's not just a plot convenience point, it's actually something that he needs to contend with, and that's part of the story, and then he can move on to the next one once he basically grows up and is able to overcome what's in front of him. And I really enjoyed that, and I felt that all of the different things that went on in this book, while at some point seemingly were unfair to Sean, it also made it more realistic and really made the story much more engaging. Now, what are some of my like more actual real critiques? One of them is that there's a romance in this story that I felt was not given the time it deserved. It was a really interesting one. I really liked how the character worked it in. Just with how much the author had to cover, he obviously did not want to devote as many pages to this romance as it deserved in order to make it really fulfilling and making it not feel like it was some like last minute add-in. And so I was really upset when the romance did not pan out exactly as I wanted it to. I understand that we basically traded romance for more epic battles, and I also, as someone who really doesn't really care for the romance angle, will take epic battles any day of the week over that. Another critique that I had about this book, I felt that there were some things within it that felt repetitive and then ended up being nothing. For example, there is this constant worry that Sean has when he's updating his building base and he's updating the infrastructure around it, where he keeps talking about a fire spreading or infection happening within his kingdom. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but neither of them culminate. There's never a fire, nor is there infection. Now, whether that's because he just kept building infrastructure and he ended up staying ahead of it, or if that's just because the author kept hinting at it but it never came to fruition, I don't know. But I was like, oh, when's the infection going to happen? When's the fire going to break out? But it never happened, and I really wanted it to happen because I wanted to see things burn. But yeah, no, so outside of those two critiques, mostly I've got favorable things to say. Enjoyed the story, enjoyed the writing, enjoyed the world building, really enjoyed the actual heart that was behind the main character of Sean, and I also thought it was a very different lit RPG that you don't see out there with the base building and the massive conquest going on all at once. He wrote really realistic characters that were really easy to hate and love, and those to be disinterested in as well. So overall, I think it was a very fun, enjoyable lit RPG, and if you're really in it and you're really willing to invest some time into it, this 1,200-page book is really worth your time, and I'm looking forward to reading more from the author. And I'm also kind of hoping that it's not really possible with the ending, and I won't tell you the ending because it's a too big of a spoiler, but I really am kind of curious to see if maybe we would get a prequel in this world, because I think it's a very interesting one, and I really enjoyed it, actually. So that is my very short review on this book. I hope you guys will be intrigued and possibly pick it up. I will attach a link down below where you guys can find it on Amazon. If you guys have already read it, let me know down in the comment section what your guys' thoughts were on it. So with that, I'll let you guys all go, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Bye now.